They never saw you coming, and they still don't understand how you're still standing. You've been targeted, tested, and twisted through storms that would have broken most. But here you are, not just alive, not just surviving, but awakening. If you've ever felt like something about your life has been under pressure for no clear reason, if people you once loved turned cold without explanation, or if strange patterns seemed to work against you even when you were doing everything right, it wasn't in your head. You were never ordinary, and that terrified the wrong people. There's a hidden war that plays out in silence, in relationships, in dreams, in energy. And the truth is, your light disrupts the systems built on shadows. You weren't meant to follow the path. They were hoping you'd stay quiet, small, confused. But you didn't. You rose. You questioned. You kept loving, kept growing, kept shining. And that made you dangerous to those who depend on fear, control, and manipulation. This isn't a tragedy. It's a rebirth. You are not a victim of the story. You are the spark that forces it to rewrite itself. You are the turning point, the glitch in their plan, the one they could not contain. And now it's your time to see just how powerful you've become. Not because of the pain, but because of what you've refused to let the pain destroy. You are chosen, not in the fairy tale sense, but in the cosmic sense, a force of nature disguised as a person. And what comes next is not just survival, it's ascension. What once felt like a bond built on trust and shared dreams begins to erode under pressure that doesn't come from within, but from external interference working in the shadows. The natural instinct to protect turns into a habit of suspicion. Compliments become comparisons. Warmth is replaced with internal conflict that your ex can't explain. Their mind, once a safe space for your memory, becomes a battleground of confusion and reactive emotion. But this shift isn't spontaneous. It's calculated. Their thoughts are subtly steered, reshaped during vulnerable moments. Even in sleep, scenarios unfold that recast you not as a partner, but as a problem. What used to bring them peace now stirs tension. Small reminders of your connection provoke irritation they never used to feel. The manipulation doesn't start with words, it starts with mood, and it moves fast. The turning point, it's not just emotional, it's economic. Someone with obsession masked as concern starts dangling illusions of prosperity in front of them. Promises of stability, elevation, and access to wealth are whispered with surgical precision. It's not framed as greed, it's framed as rescue. Escape from hardship, escape from you. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. These offers strike where confidence is weakest. Financial struggles, private frustrations, unmet ambitions, all twisted into leverage. They are made to believe their limitations are linked directly to their loyalty to you, that the opportunities they crave can only appear once the chapter involving you is permanently closed. Suddenly, your presence is portrayed as the wall keeping them from the life they believe they deserve. Strategic stories are shared, legal loopholes, imagined business openings, inheritance paths that supposedly reappear if you're removed from the picture. The pressure mounts not with threats, but with seductive promises. You could have this life if only you let go of that one. It's not just manipulation. It's a slow rewrite of their moral compass. The person they once were is being rewritten, line by someone who knows exactly where to apply pressure and how to hide the pen. It doesn't begin with a plan. It begins with a suggestion, a careful seed dropped into a vulnerable mind, coated in concern and cloaked in logic. That's how the shift starts. Slowly, a line is drawn in their thinking, where you're no longer seen as someone to navigate life with, but as an obstacle to be managed, not through negotiation, but elimination. The person feeding these thoughts isn't obvious. They use soft tones, calculated pauses, and the appearance of maturity. They don't yell, they reason. They explain away your existence as a misalignment, a liability. They pose questions like traps, dressed up as thoughtful reflections. Have you thought about what's holding you back? What would happen if that stress disappeared? What they're really asking is, what if this person wasn't in your life anymore at all? Soon, responsibility is weaponized. The concept of loyalty gets twisted. What once would have been unthinkable is now dressed in terms of strategy and stability. Choices are repackaged as sacrifices for the greater good. That greater good? It's always abstract. Children, legacy, family peace, future security. It's never about murder. It's always about maturity. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. The descent is never immediate. It's rehearsed in fiction, imagined like a puzzle being solved. If this happened, would anyone even notice? Wouldn't it be better for everyone? These are rehearsals, played over and over until the repulsion dulls, until numbness sets in, until fear is replaced with rationalization. The person pulling the strings never directly tells your ex to act. Instead, they create an emotional environment where doing nothing feels irresponsible. Their words drip with manipulation disguised as mentorship. Their tone suggests guidance, but their agenda is control. Eventually, reality is flipped. You, once seen as a partner, are now cast as the storm, a complication, an anchor, a shadow over what could be. Your presence becomes a problem that needs to be solved, not with conversation, but with removal. Permanent, irreversible removal. This isn't just mind games. It's grooming, a slow, calculated erosion of boundaries, a remapping of morality, a quiet permission slip to cross a line that should never be crossed. Not for money, not for legacy, not for peace. And yet here they are, convinced it's all the same thing. What begins as a seemingly innocent exchange of ideas subtly morphs into a calculated strategy, cleverly cloaked in intellectual curiosity. The individual is drawn into a web of detailed possibilities, scenarios presented as mere hypotheticals that slowly evolve into executable actions. Through prolonged exposure and subtle psychological shifts, the person's moral compass gradually loses alignment. Their ability to perceive the gravity of their choices is dulled by unseen influences as their internal safeguards erode. The transition is seamless. Reason is restructured. Emotions are redirected, and judgment becomes a distorted reflection of its former self. They begin to equate harm with resolution, falsely believing that what they're enabling serves a greater peace. With every step, the illusion of righteousness deepens, and the mechanisms of danger are set in place. Manipulated environments, tainted consumables, or constructed misfortunes, all crafted to appear spontaneous, all calculated to ensure deniability. But what the orchestrators of this plan cannot foresee is the presence of unseen forces that nullify their schemes at the point of execution. These protective currents do not whisper warnings, they act. The elements meant to harm lose their sting. The paths meant to mislead shift underfoot. Devices fail at critical moments, unforeseen obstacles intervene, and opportunities for harm collapse in on themselves. The threat dissipates not by luck, but by the activation of a higher order of intervention that shields without spectacle and deflects with precision. As the machinery of sabotage creaks into motion, a deeper system awakens, one forged long before the conflict began. It reconfigures the space around the intended target, altering outcomes at the root. What was set to harm instead reveals itself, and what was meant to conclude becomes the beginning of unraveling the deceit. The guardianship at play is not symbolic, but operational, embedded in the very fabric of cause and effect, eluding comprehension, yet absolute in its function. Every directed blow, every secret scheme intended to undo the target, becomes raw material repurposed by unseen forces to fortify resilience. The very energy used to destabilize ends up reinforcing the invisible infrastructure that safeguards their path. The attacks, meant to fracture, instead forge a stronger layer of spiritual armor, each hostile move automatically transmuted into a surge of counteracting strength. The efforts to dismantle become unwilling donations to a protective system far beyond mortal design. Those seeking collapse fail to understand that their aggression becomes the catalyst for revelation. The unfolding of extraordinary survival in the face of orchestrated downfall lays bare the existence of protection untouched by ordinary logic. As dangers multiply, so too does the presence of something far-reaching and inexplicable, a force that doesn't retreat under pressure but expands, reconfiguring the battleground itself. Their inability to eliminate the target proves a truth they are not equipped to accept. The protected operate in alignment with powers not subject to human interference. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the Super Thank You button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. Clarity strikes not with whispers, but with a violent interruption of illusion. The veil over the mind tears, and in a single, excruciating instant, the truth pierces through. A once dulled awareness is ignited into painful comprehension. They have been turned into a tool for devastation. The strategy once praised as rational suddenly appears grotesque. No longer able to rationalize, they now see the manipulation for what it was: methodical, intimate, and devastatingly effective. With awareness comes the collapse of denial. The magnitude of what has been done under influence takes shape. Layers of deceit are stripped away, exposing how personal vulnerabilities were mapped and exploited with ruthless precision. What was once seen as loyalty or self-preservation reveals itself as complicit betrayal. This realization doesn't arrive quietly. It crashes in with overwhelming weight, dragging with it a fear that goes beyond morality, fear of retribution, exposure, and irreversible damage. Panic settles in when the implications are understood, not just emotionally, but legally. The actions committed, now undeniable, are preserved in ways that offer no escape. There is no wiping of fingerprints or rewinding of words. The shadow of accountability lengthens, independent of whether the puppeteer behind it all is ever named. A reckoning settles like a dense fog that refuses to lift. What once felt justified now begins to rot from within, turning every quiet moment into a confrontation with something unseen. The consequences ripple beyond logic. restless nights haunted by visions, physical ailments without diagnosis, and an unbearable weight pressing from nowhere. The internal unrest is not psychological alone. It echoes from dimensions beyond ordinary reach, signaling a violation that stirs forces far older and far less forgiving than any legal code. In the material world, patterns silently build themselves. Casual messages, routine transactions, and private searches align like puzzle pieces, revealing a sinister image. Digital records, once dismissed as harmless background noise, now glare with unmistakable intent. The trail of interactions maps out a storyline of calculated harm, one that can be followed without interpretation, one that assembles itself into evidence even without confession. With chilling clarity, the realization strikes: nothing stays buried. Communications long forgotten are stored, accessible to any authority with the tools to retrieve them. Every step taken, every location visited, every item purchased, pieces of an invisible timeline ready to be summoned into the light. The security once assumed in encrypted chats and deleted logs dissolves instantly under scrutiny. While those behind the curtain remain elusive, their influence leaves behind footprints too consistent to ignore. Their hands never appear directly, but their influence is encoded into repeated coincidences, unexplained deposits, and indirect suggestions that align too precisely to be accidental. What they orchestrated with caution is now traced back to them through behavioral rhythms and unspoken arrangements. What becomes most terrifying is not the crime itself, but the position it leaves behind. The one coerced into action becomes the one left exposed. As the true architect recedes into shadow, the evidence hardens against the visible actor. Surveillance footage, credit histories, geolocation data, they do not care for context. Together, they construct a story the legal system is all too eager to believe. The trap wasn't just in the act, it was in being made the face of it. There comes a moment when the illusion of safety collapses under the weight of accumulated evidence. What once seemed buried beneath layers of distraction and denial becomes traceable, inevitable. In a world woven with digital strands and systemic memory, evading accountability becomes a fiction. The trail of behaviors, transactions, messages, and movements form a silent testimony, and when scrutinized by those who know how to listen, the truth begins to speak with perfect clarity. The greater framework of existence, unseen yet ever operating, reacts not with vengeance, but correction. Actions rooted in destruction activate an ancient mechanism of restoration. Harm directed outward does not vanish into the void. It returns, intensified, precise, and inescapable. What was unleashed now circles back with ruthless symmetry. The imbalance must be addressed, and the system reclaims harmony in ways that transcend conventional logic. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. The architect of manipulation begins to encounter fractures in their reality that cannot be explained by chance alone. Plans deteriorate, resources vanish, systems once thought reliable betray them. Everything they built begins to corrode as though touched by an invisible decay. Their intentions, once aimed outward, now implode inward, rewriting their life in patterns of confusion, failure, and loss. A physical toll follows the spiritual one. The energy they emit, once masked, begins to corrode the vessel that carries it. Their body mirrors the unrest of their spirit. Fatigue grows unrelenting, clarity disappears, and sleep offers no relief. What they sought to inflict manifests in them with uncanny fidelity. Illness without origin, panic without cause, and a heaviness they cannot explain overtake their daily existence. Meanwhile, the co-conspirator faces a personal collapse woven from threads they helped spin. Their world, once seemingly secured through calculated control, begins to unravel in fast forward. Relationships disintegrate under the pressure of unrevealed truths. Every hidden act drags consequences behind it, like a storm long on the horizon. Their standing in communities, once firm, erodes as an unspoken awareness of their nature spreads. What should have unfolded over decades is compressed into a rapid spiral. Their lessons come not in whispers, but in crashes. A tide of reckoning floods their reality, forcing them to confront the fallout of choices made under false conviction. The speed and force of their downfall reveal that the balance being restored is not guided by human timelines, but something far older and far less forgiving. And in the quiet aftermath, when noise subsides and mirrors cannot be avoided, the weight of what has occurred settles like a permanent shadow. Not just regret, but existential collapse. To realize that they tried to destroy someone once held close under illusions fed by fear and selfishness is to fall into a crisis of identity so deep it erodes the borders of the self. What remains is not a person, but the echo of a soul, forced to reckon with what it allowed itself to become. Haunted by the gravity of their actions, they begin to unravel beneath the weight of consequence. An instinct to repair what they've shattered emerges, not for redemption, but to halt what feels like a descent they can no longer control. An urge rises to step between danger and its target, to dismantle what they helped create, even at personal cost. But the path to atonement is obstructed by their own footprints. Every secret they now wish to reveal is tied to evidence that implicates them. Each attempt to warn or intervene only tightens the bind. Severing ties with the architect behind it all proves futile. Invisible chains remain, forged from mutual guilt and shared silence. Attempts to escape the structure of conspiracy meet threats veiled in casual words and reminders of how deeply their hands are stained. The plot no longer needs their consent. It holds them in place through fear of exposure, entanglement, and the irreversible damage already done. Their suffering shifts into something unearthly. It's no longer just the mind that falters. A cold presence seems to trail them. Whispers heard where no one stands. Rooms that feel crowded when they are alone. Forces that do not forgive begin making themselves known, not with rage, but with relentless scrutiny. Having crossed into territory marked by unseen boundaries, they carry a signal that draws unwelcome attention from layers of existence few understand. Everything begins to retreat from them. Connections dissolve with no explanation. Conversations shift, glances linger in unease, and invitations vanish. Without knowing why, people sense a corrosion beneath the surface and pull away. Instead of comfort, their world fills with individuals who mirror their decay. Aggressive, manipulative, chaotic. Their energy repels warmth and draws disorder, until only the echo of what they had remains. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. And while their world withers, another quietly ascends. The very moment plans to silence or obstruct take form, another trajectory accelerates beyond their grasp. Where they plant disruption, The soil grows prosperity elsewhere. The contrast is jarring. What was intended as destruction becomes the backdrop to an unfolding rise. Projects succeed, doors open, unexpected allies appear. Circumstances bend in favor of one marked for a different kind of path, one lifted, not broken. Success emerges in strange harmony with attempted sabotage. While chaos multiplies for the conspirators, balance tilts sharply toward the one they sought to erase. Prosperity is no longer random. It aligns with intention. Triumphs arrive in synchronized waves. Personal expansion, creative momentum, financial growth. Each new gain echoes louder against the backdrop of their failure, until even the unaware begin to notice the impossible contrast. This isn't mere chance, it's design. Something larger orchestrates this separation, this collision of descent and elevation. Truth begins to stir beneath the surface. What was hidden starts surfacing through legal unraveling, intuitive insight, and collective realization. The mask slips, and the fabric holding the scheme together tears from all sides. The weight of lies, once tightly woven, collapses into exposure. The downfall, once distant, now moves with unstoppable precision toward those who birthed it. Real clarity arrives when silence becomes more corrosive than truth. The realization lands with crushing finality. Continuing the lie only amplifies the harm already set in motion. The weight of complicity begins to erode every layer of self-preservation, until the only way forward is total disclosure. At this stage, confession stops being a noble gesture. It becomes the only option left that doesn't consume what remains of the soul. Truth is no longer optional, it's survival. Signals begin to surface in ways no one fully controls. Details emerge from places thought secure. Data once dismissed becomes impossible to ignore. Authorities, either by circumstance or unseen orchestration, are led to intersections in the timeline where everything aligns. A process begins, slow, grinding, but inevitable. The structure built in secrecy starts to fracture. The illusion of control disintegrates under the growing pressure of exposure. The central manipulator faces collapse from all angles. Carefully buried evidence begins clawing its way to the surface. Stories, documents, interactions all begin to align into a narrative too coherent to dismiss. Those who once feared to speak begin to come forward, step beyond the screen, join and help light the way for others. The atmosphere shifts from secrecy to reckoning. What was once hidden in darkness starts unfolding under unrelenting illumination. Throughout this unraveling, a deeper pattern reveals itself. The forces that blocked every attempt to erase a life now turn their attention to justice. Their influence is not symbolic. It reorders the environment, bending outcomes to correct imbalance. Every move toward fairness is reinforced by this undercurrent of purposeful design. This isn't mere luck or fate. It's a structured defense rooted in something immeasurably ancient. Protection, in this context, doesn't just preserve, it elevates. The one targeted for removal continues to rise, not through resistance alone, but through alignment with a purpose greater than individual survival. Their existence supports something collective, catalytic, abilities, insight, expression. These qualities resonate outward, igniting change beyond personal scope. The shelter they receive isn't personal favoritism, it's strategic safeguarding of essential potential. What the adversaries overlook is the nature of the being they're up against. Not a target in the conventional sense, but a junction where higher directives influence material outcomes. Their mistake wasn't underestimating strength, it was misunderstanding origin. The retaliation their actions provoke doesn't emerge from human hands, but from systems far beyond comprehension, yet deeply entwined with reality. Each attempt to remove becomes proof of importance. As plans to silence are revealed, so too is the value of what was nearly lost. The scale of opposition validates the magnitude of purpose. No campaign, no attack, no orchestrated sabotage could fabricate such credibility. Ironically, the opposition becomes the greatest advertisement for the very presence they sought to erase. The revelation becomes impossible to contain. Legal consequences, moral consequences, and spiritual reckoning move in parallel. And through it all, one truth becomes increasingly undeniable. Protection wasn't coincidence, it was appointment. And those who tried to disrupt it only proved how necessary that protection truly was.